So, we've just spoken about the actual story itself. Uh, Thanks again, Alex, for joining
Yeah,
me as Cactus. Uh,
I'm gonna. I mean, don't worry. There will be revealed the lore of the cactus
Maybe one
for
day.
another time.
One day we'll just have it where we just end it, where I'm just literally talking either to myself or to someone who I've given an entire script of what happened, and they just read out the story of the
Yeah,
cactus.
I
I
hope that, I hope I was reading out okay because I'm just doing my recollections of it. And I stuttered a little bit there,
No,
so
that's
it
alright.
was like, yeah,
It's not real storytelling. I feel like if you don't at least tell a story the way that you specifically want. If you tell it like someone else, like that's fine. But I don't know. I personally, I have a personal taste towards when someone wants to tell their side of the story in their sort of manner. For
I,
instance, for those of you who are wondering what that story was from, uh, that was the first ever time, Alex, you playtested the Anime Tales.
I know it's my very first character who, it kind of reflected that. I think the very first character because I didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going. I just sort of literally though Dr. Satan, I mean Satine, was just it was a placeholder name. Like I just thought, okay, two words, he's a demon, Dr. Satan. All right, we'll come up with something better later, and we never did because it was just, you know, fine there. So it kind of reflected that. It was like sort of I just put like loads of stats in different things, and it was like a case of um a jack of all trades, master of none. And
That is actually
yeah.
true. That
It
is
is.
very
It
accurate.
was kind of like, yeah, I mean, I have a habit of doing this with characters if I don't know quite what I'm doing. I'm not a min-maxer. It's sort of, okay, maybe a bit of this, bit of that, bit of whatever, and it kind of reflected the newness of it, and it kind of like, yeah, it was a good time. It was like a character I think was like sort of a bit sort of half-baked from the beginning, but sort of did manage to surprise people by just how jammy they were in getting out of situations. Or getting into situations.
I'd say the only thing that you did miss
Mhm.
uh, in that story was when you said he used his solar mode.
Ah,
Now, he did state later in the fight that he stated later in the deal that he would use a certain percentage of his power. Now, for those of you who don't know Solace, he's an NPC in the Super Society module that if you play as a villain or as a hero, he is super end game level. Like you're not supposed to fight him ever. But if you do attempt to, there are only certain ways of beating him unless if you get to actually level 30, max out your character and actually have some decent weapons or powers or even just uh, strategies to beating him. He is a fire mimic, as is seen in his artwork. His entire body means that his physiology is almost intangible to physical attacks, and he is immune to fire. But he has an ability known as star mimicry. Uh, Upon rolling a high enough dice, or at least upon rolling a high enough DC, a dice check, he can actually turn his flame into sort of, I guess you could say, a sunburst, where he deals not only fire but energy, or in D&D's case, it would usually say like radiant or something, which is it consummates as what's known as a crossbreed damage type, which basically means it does one. It still does the normal dice roll, but whatever the user is resistant to, it uses that as the base of where it goes. Okay, so you're resistant to fire. Cool, it does energy instead. You're resistant to energy. It'll do fire instead. Whichever one is the highest resistance, it ignores that one and goes for the weakest one, basically.
So
At n-
absolutely, I would have been screwed regardless if it
at
had hit if
at
it hit me.
no point during that fight did he use his solo mode.
Oh, did he not? Oh,
No. So during that fight, he had the possibility of using his fire or his solar. His solar times his dice by 2 times, meaning that he would be able to roll 2 times the amount of dice. Outside of his solar mode, he can roll 5d10s of fire damage. In that fight, he chose only to ever use 1d10.
okay. So, but still, that's quite a lot nonetheless.
When
That
he
would have
when
hurt.
he ended it, that's when I think you started taking a lot of his clothing to use as weapons and shields.
Hmm.
He then started using a few more dice, but I never made it that he could ever use any more than 3, because had he have critted, getting all max rolls, if he had used 5d10s, he would have just completely crisped you. If you had failed the blocking roll or a dodge roll or whatsoever, it's that thing of, I slightly fail, average damage of 25. So I went against that. The fire did indeed dissipate. His body did dissipate um, every time that you hit him or
Yeah.
moved the clothing. It didn't damage him though.
Yeah.
It
It just
just
mildly annoyed him.
it just meant that you couldn't damage yourself whilst hitting him, and it also meant that he couldn't damage you whilst you used it to block. So it was always that thing of, again, it was a fight for survival. It was that trick of, look, you didn't take any damage during this fight, and yeah, he made a deal. Honestly, when I DM'd that, I genuinely believed that, look, I'll make a deal with you, but let's be honest, it's not going to work out the way that you want. Uh, you did it. You pulled it off. So well
Yeah,
done.
I'm just as surprised as you. Like, I mean, literally, it was just the thought. Like, I guess in my head and Caps, it's like, well, his clothes aren't burning, so if I could just use if I could just steal his clothes, then maybe this will be a kind of okay fight, And it's actually really funny because that is like Dr. Satie's greatest moment because I've just had incredibly bad luck, on everything else before and since then. Like just everything kind of like went to crap for this character, including losing a hand.
Yes, that was interesting.
Yeah. So it is sort of like, yeah, it was the moment, maybe it just sort of like it cursed everything because it's like it took everyone by surprise, especially since like, oh well, you're not going to talk your way out of this. No, I stole my way out of this. I stole his clothing, and yeah,
No.
I thought that that was amusing, and I wanted people to know about it because I kind of abandoned Doctor Satine a while ago. I was just moving on to other things, and that it just it's the way that I'd like him to be remembered.
I think it is quite a nice one. So yes, we won't go into any of the other further stories of him because I think this one is a very good story. But it brings me further to this part of the actual um, conversation, of this the storytelling campfire that we sit sit around. Um, it was a story that was supposed to sort of culminate the two things of a difficult situation and thinking your way out of it, rather than being able to be the best damage dealer or being able to neutralize or defeat the enemy. It was literally just, I have a strategy, and if it works, I can get out of this. I can survive. Um, and I think in a lot of ways, uh, those are probably some of the best stories, because those are, a lot of the time, I don't know about you, but I can't really say about everyone else, but as a personal experience, it's a lot more relatable of a hero surviving rather than always winning. That they think around the problem, they try and come up with a creative solution, or even just outpacing in the terms of, look, I know you can destroy me, but if I can just not be destroyed for a few more seconds, or a few more minutes, or a few more however much time, then I will either win, or at least I won't lose. And
I really like that. It also just it sort of is a testament to like Dr. Satine as a character, really, because they a lot of their abilities, like you actually were quite surprised, like that I barely like, leveled my super strength or my other abilities and stuff, because all I really needed and all I really used was my charisma module and just finding interesting ways to win things without fighting or without doing like the stealth or anything. I could literally just do it, by using my wits and a little bit of chicanery.
yeah,
Yeah,
I th-
that
I, th-
doesn't always go well, but
I think
sometimes it did go.
I think that's probably also another thing that I really liked was the the best ability that has ever come out of that story.
Oh, please tell. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I love this.
Would you like me to tell the story?
Go tell the story. I
So
love it.
in the
So
game,
happy.
when you defeat bosses, you can get these things called titles or accolades. You can use them to get special abilities, extra boosts, uh, but the main thing that you can get are these things called signatures. They can either be an ultimate move, which basically means one attack per day can be double damage, so you can roll double damage. A signature, which means that you can do a special ability, where either you don't have to roll for it or you can roll advantage for it, depending on the situation. A signature attack, which means that you roll advantage on damage, but you can get it back after a long rest rather than once per day. A finishing combo, which means that you can land multiple attacks on one opponent. Again, you have to have a long rest before you can use that again. And the final one is a unique attribute, which is something that permanently alters the way that either the character plays, grants them a new special ability, or alters their powers, but has some kind of factorial downside. Either there's a greater limit, or a new limitation, a new weakness, or even maybe it's harder to roll for than the usual abilities, but it's always passively there. Now, the doc got a signature and created an ability called I Know a Guy. And this signature was based off of a signature move where they would, instead of rolling something, they would just state, I know a guy. And this would immediately mean that once a day, throughout a situation, they could use this ability and they would have a person who knew someone or who was involved in some way in a situation that would help them. And Alex, you use this quite a lot because the whole point is that he was a game show host, and there was a moment where they were like, "We need to get onto the other side of the city, but it's going to take us a while, uh, and we don't know if we're going to be seen, and we can't be. Some of us can't be seen because some of us are either wanted or some of us are on undercover."
Well, I got some good news for you there, Joe, because I know a guy. I love this a bit. I honestly I think it's the best thing that I came up with. Well, I guess we both came up with it really, because it was like I came up with that and you allowed me to have it, as part of the rejigging it for the
It's because
signature.
it made so much sense, and honestly, it did mean that there was a moment where when you guys lost a plot thread, you could just go, "I know a guy who might be able to help us in this situation because we've just hit a dead end," and then suddenly it would just be this moment where, again, the transport situation, a guy who had a monster truck limousine, the monster bus, that's it.
Because of course I would know someone who has that. Because I'm in showbiz.
Oh, good old Animite Tales
Oh,
logic. There is just a guy knows almost anyone and everyone. Although we did obviously have some downsides for it, which was it couldn't work in a location that you didn't know someone.
yeah.
For instance, like you could go, "Oh, I know a guy." It's like, yes, but they're not here. Or when you went to a remote island, you went, "I know a guy, but he's in another country and I can't contact him."
I know. It was kind of sad when we had to move location. It's like, but that was still kind of good. Of course, it had to, have the rule of time and space and stuff. Like if we were in the middle of space or something, then it's like, I know a guy that can like help us in this moment. I can't contact him, and we don't have powers that exist in this universe that are like that, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it had to kind of make sense, It had to have some plausibility. Like you stretch the plausibility just a little bit, but it's like because it's cartoony, but it had to kind of make sense.
It's still worked. I mean, considering that a lot of us were always talking about Donk's Donk Fist, which was his ultimate. I've nicknamed it that. I don't know what he's actually named it, other than probably ultimate move. But it was the Donk Fist was just literally he threw a punch and it would do double damage. And at one point he used it and instantly defeated a overtly cocky speedster. Um, and
Honestly, that I felt bad afterwards because they were like, "Aha! How I have revealed myself," and that was the worst thing that she could have done.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. But ultimately, it really comes down to that thing of this character was as was said earlier, a show of adversity and challenge. And oh boy, howdy, did you have a lot of adversity and challenge? But in this one moment, you not only showed that creativity, strategy, but also just the willing to continue is better than almost anything else. If you're not sure, then think your way around it. And even if not, go on the defensive, go on the evasive. Think before you attack. And it was that exact moment that got you that moment of, I can at least say that I survived 5 rotations in combat against probably the most powerful character so far that has come about from the Animite Tales modules. So that is, I mean, even Bill, who made a character specifically designed to succeed him, still hasn't beat Solace yet. I mean, hell, Bill as playing as Phileas Soul, the son of Solace Soul, still lost to Solace after 2 rounds of combat. I mean, albeit he did use all of his power, but I don't know, I
It's
still,
still nice. I do like
doesn't
that as
matter,
well.
still counts.
I think that in the spirit of Dr. Sating, I'm counting it as a win. I'm
Yeah,
just saying, like, I definitely think that, Satine would, embellish this story a lot over the years, say, like, yeah, I mean, my life was in danger, but luckily I came through. Oh boy, was he mad. Whereas,
that's a
more
fact.
likely, yeah, Solace was just sort of amused by it more than anything. It's like, yes, I could kill you with a finger snap, if I wanted to, but you have surprised me, mortal. You have entertained me for a time.
But yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, this story has been told, and if to any of you who enjoyed this story, check it out. Um, as we just recorded the first half of this story, which was the battle of a simple archling fighting the sun. And if you enjoyed this, if you
I must
enjoy,
say that goes to show just how, like, ridiculous it is that I sort of won. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna stare directly at the sun. This is a game that most people lose. I'm gonna fight the sun.
It's like you won a staring contest.
Yeah,
You
it's
don't
like
you don't really sure if how you won exactly, but you just you basically you outstared the loser. That's literally it. But if anyone of you enjoyed this story, or even this post-story discussion, please check out the YouTube channel. Check out my Twitter at Animite Tales. I am known as Ongoer Joe, and I will be doing many more of these stories later on. Uh, Thank you again, Alex the Cactus, or Cactus the Alex. Uh, but if
rock
any
it
of
first.
you, if any of you enjoyed these and want to hear more, please stay tuned on YouTube. Please subscribe, like, and of course, we'll see you next time for the next Campfire Stories.